There's a phrase I carry with me everywhere I go in this work. I heard it years ago, and it stopped me in my tracks because it named something I'd been feeling but couldn't articulate. Your task is to turn your ghosts into ancestors. Let me explain. Ghosts are the things that haunt you. They show up uninvited. A sound, a smell, a glance from a stranger that suddenly floods your body with emotion that doesn't belong in the present moment. They live in your chest, your jaw, your gut. They make you flinch at things that aren't dangerous and freeze in situations that should be manageable. Ghosts are unprocessed, fragments of experience that were never given a story, never placed in a timeline, never witnessed by anyone. They exist in the body as raw sensation without context. Ancestors are different. Ancestors are the same experiences, the same losses, the same wounds, the same ruptures, but integrated, given narrative form, placed in time. This happened then. I survived it. I'm here now, telling the story. Ancestors still carry weight. They still matter. They still shape who you are, but they don't ambush you. You carry them consciously, not unconsciously. They inform your life instead of haunting it. The difference between a ghost and an ancestor is a story told in the presence of a witness. And today, I'm going to teach you the practice that makes that transformation possible, the Community Storytelling Circle. A monthly gathering where human beings do the thing that has rewired trauma for 300,000 years of Homo sapiens existence. They sit together, they tell the truth, and they are heard. I'm Sarah, and this is Ritual Friday on the Wired Ape. This episode is the most emotionally significant practice in our entire toolkit. Everything we've taught, breathwork for nervous system regulation, expressive writing for individual narrative construction, the fire circle for honest conversation, the synchrony circle for body-level bonding, converges here. The Community Storytelling Circle combines all of them: narrative processing, witness listening, communal co-regulation, and the neurological transformation that occurs when implicit, procedural, body-stored trauma is translated into explicit, declarative, story-formed memory. This pairs directly with Wednesday's Scholars Fire on Grief as Science and the Bluefield Project. Wednesday explored the theory that grief is a biological process requiring completion, not a disorder requiring suppression. Today delivers the practice, the ritual container, in which grief, trauma, and difficulty find their narrative form, and in finding it, change the brain. Here's the Wired Ape frame, and it's grounded in Nobel Prize-winning neuroscience. Eric Kandel, who won the 2000 Nobel Prize in Physiology or Medicine for his work on the biological basis of memory, established 5 principles that form the backbone of modern neuropsychiatry. The 5th principle is the one that matters most today. Insofar as psychotherapy or counseling is effective and produces long-term changes in behavior, it presumably does so through learning, by producing changes in gene expression that alter the strength of synaptic connections and structural changes that alter the anatomical pattern of interconnections between nerve cells. In plain English, talking about your experiences physically rewires your brain, not metaphorically, not as a soothing platitude, structurally. The synapses change. The gene expression changes. The neural connections change. When you tell your story, and especially when you tell your story in the presence of witnesses, you are not just getting it off your chest. You are rebuilding the architecture of your memory system. That is what every human culture has known for millennia, and what modern neuroscience has now confirmed. Witness narrative transforms trauma. It turns ghosts into ancestors. 3 cultural traditions, 3 continents, 3 approaches to the same neurological truth. In traditional Irish culture, the wake, the gathering that takes place in the home of the deceased between death and burial, is not primarily about mourning. It's about storytelling. Friends, family, neighbors, and sometimes near strangers gather in the home where the body lies, and they tell stories about the person who died. Not eulogies, not formal tributes, stories. Funny ones, embarrassing stories, tender ones, outrageous ones. Stories that bring the dead person back to life in narrative form, that gives them shape through the accumulated testimony of everyone who knew them. The wake can last for days. There is food, drink, often generously, and the continuous weaving of a communal narrative around the absence. The function, which the Irish understood intuitively, long before anyone measured amygdala activity or hippocampal volume, is that communal storytelling transforms the raw shock of loss into structured memory. The deceased moves from ghost, an absence that haunts, a presence that can never be confronted again, to ancestor, a coherent narrative figure who continues to exist in the community's shared story. The telling is the mechanism. The community is the witness. The wake is the ritual container. In many Aboriginal Australian communities, the death of a community member initiates a period of collective mourning known broadly as sorry business, a term that encompasses a range of practices varying across nations and language groups. Sorry business is not private grief. It is communal processing. The entire community participates. There are prescribed periods of mourning, ceremonial practices, restrictions on naming the deceased in many traditions, and, importantly, structured opportunities for communal expression of grief, wailing, singing, storytelling, and ceremony that can continue for extended periods. The anthropological insight is that sorry business treats grief as a community event, not an individual pathology. The loss belongs to the group because the person belonged to the group. And the processing of that loss, the conversion of acute shock into integrated memory, is understood to require the full participation of the community. You don't grieve alone, you grieve with. From a neuroscience perspective, this is co-regulated grief processing. The communal context provides nervous system co-regulation, multiple autonomic systems stabilizing each other, narrative witnessing, the stories told about the deceased are heard by the community, and temporal structure, prescribed mourning periods that give grief a beginning, a middle, and an end, the very structure that hippocampal narrative processing requires. In Jewish mourning tradition, Shiva, from the Hebrew word for 7, is a 7-day mourning period following burial, during which the bereaved family sits at home and receives visitors. The community comes to them. The mourners sit on low chairs, a physical posture of grief. Mirrors are covered. Normal routines are suspended. The critical element. Visitors come not to fix the mourner's grief, but to be present with it. The traditional instruction is to let the mourner speak first, to follow their lead, to listen, to witness. The community gathers daily for prayer. Meals are brought by others, so the mourner doesn't need to care for themselves. Shiva provides exactly what the neuroscience of grief processing demands: a structured temporal container, 7 days, long enough for the acute limbic response to begin settling, communal witnessing, the mourner's experience is held by the community, not carried alone, narrative opportunities, visitors invite stories about the deceased, and physical care. The biological needs of the grieving body are met by others while the emotional processing occurs. After 7 days, the mourner rises from Shiva. This is not the end of grief. Jewish tradition prescribes additional mourning periods of 30 days, shloshim, and 11 months. But the 7-day community container provides the most intense phase of witness narrative processing, after which the mourner re-enters the world with the first scaffolding of a story in place. The ghost has begun to become an ancestor. Here's the convergence. 3 traditions, 3 vastly different cultural contexts: Celtic, Aboriginal, Semitic, and the identical structural insight. Grief processed in community through witness narrative produces transformation that solitary grief cannot. The mourner doesn't just feel better. The memory restructures. The experience moves from raw, fragmented, body-stored sensation to coherent, temporally organized, socially embedded narrative. Let's look at some appropriation considerations. Aboriginal sorry business is a living cultural practice with specific ceremonial protocols, custodianship, and spiritual significance that varies across nations. Jewish Shiva is a religious practice embedded in halakha. The Irish way carries specific cultural and sometimes religious dimensions. The community storytelling circle we teach today draws structural inspiration from the principle these traditions share: witness communal narrative as a vehicle for grief transformation, without replicating any specific ceremonial element. We strongly encourage listeners drawn to any of these traditions to engage with them through the communities that hold them. Eric Kandel's Nobel Prize-winning research on the sea slug Aplysia established a fundamental truth about how memory works at the cellular level. Learning doesn't create new neurons, at least not in the circuits he studied. It changes the strength and number of synaptic connections between existing neurons. Short-term memory involves temporary changes in the function of pre-existing synapses. Long-term memory involves changes in gene expression that lead to the growth of new synaptic connections, actual physical structural changes in the brain. Kendall's thesis to the American Psychiatric Association was that, insofar as psychotherapy produces enduring changes in people's behavior, it does so by producing enduring changes in people's brains, and those enduring changes are carried by changes in the structure of the brain. Brain imaging studies have confirmed this directly. A landmark 2004 study showed that effective psychotherapy in depressed patients caused metabolic changes primarily in the brain's thinking areas, the prefrontal cortex, the forebrain, while SSRIs most strongly affected subcortical, non-thinking areas. Psychotherapy and medication arrive at similar outcomes through different neural pathways. Medication works bottom-up on brain chemistry. Psychotherapy works top-down through conscious processing, which then changes brain chemistry through altered gene expression. Counseling has been shown to create measurable reductions in activity in the right caudate nucleus in people with OCD and to normalize serotonin levels and sleep patterns in depression, changes that are structurally identical to those produced by medication. Here's the mechanism that connects Kendall's principles to the community storytelling circle. Traumatic and deeply emotional experiences are often stored as implicit procedural memory, the body-based unconscious memory system that stores emotional patterns, conditioned responses, and sensory-motor sequences without conscious awareness. Implicit memory is why a war veteran flinches at a car backfire, why a survivor of abuse tenses at a particular tone of voice, why a bereaved person's chest constricts at a song that was playing during a funeral. These reactions aren't decided. They're triggered automatically, unconsciously, from stored patterns the person may not even be able to articulate. Implicit memory is primarily mediated by the amygdala and associated limbic structures. It doesn't have a timestamp, it doesn't have a narrative. It exists as pattern without story. And because it lacks temporal context, because the amygdala doesn't know that the event happened in the past, the body treats the triggered memory as a present tense threat. Every triggering is a re-experiencing, not a remembering. This is the neurological architecture of haunting. This is what it means to be visited by ghosts. Explicit, declarative memory, by contrast, is mediated by the hippocampus. It has temporal organization, beginning, middle, end, causal structure, this happened because of that, and contextual embedding. This happened there, then, and it's over. Explicit memory is narrative. It's the kind of memory that allows you to say, this happened to me, and here's the story of it. The conversion from implicit to explicit, from procedural ghost to narrative ancestor, is what happens when you tell the story of a difficult experience. The act of narration forces hippocampal engagement. You must construct temporal sequence, assign causation, take perspective, and place the experience within the larger arc of your life story. In doing so, you retranscribe the memory, moving it from amygdala-dominated, body-stored, present-tense reactivity to hippocampus-mediated, narrative-structured, past-tense integration. Pennebaker's expressive writing research, which we covered in an earlier Ritual Friday, demonstrated this mechanism through individual writing. But the community storytelling circle adds 3 critical elements that individual processing cannot. First is co-regulation. As we explored in the Fire Circle episode, physical proximity activates the polyvagal social engagement system, the neural circuit connecting the vagus nerve, facial muscles, and voice. When you tell a difficult story in the presence of regulated, witnessing others, their calm nervous systems help regulate yours. You borrow their parasympathetic stability. The story can be told from a regulated state rather than a dysregulated one, which is precisely the condition required for hippocampal narrative processing. The hippocampus goes partially offline during acute stress. Second is witnessed validation. The experience of being heard, truly heard, without advice, without judgment, without someone trying to fix it, activates social reward circuits, oxytocin, endorphin release, that attach a positive social valence to the memory of telling the story. The body encodes not just, I told this painful story, but I told this painful story and was received. This social encoding provides what researchers call a corrective emotional experience. The experience rewrites the emotional tag on the memory from "this is dangerous to share" to "this can be shared safely." The third is temporal structure through witnessed response. When the community hears your story and holds it, through silence, through eye contact, through the simple fact of remaining present, they provide external confirmation that the story exists in shared reality. It's no longer inside your body. It has been externalized, received, and placed in the community's collective memory. This externalization is the final step in the ghost to ancestor conversion. The experience now belongs to a shared narrative, not just to an individual body. Each time you narrate a difficult experience in a safe communal context, you strengthen the neural pathway from the prefrontal cortex to the amygdala, the top-down regulatory pathway that gives the thinking brain greater influence over the reacting brain. Over repeated storytelling sessions, this pathway strengthens through the same synaptic plasticity mechanisms Kandel identified. Repeated activation leads to increased synaptic strength, which leads to changes in gene expression, which leads to structural growth of new connections. The result, the limbic reactivity, the ghost, weakens. The prefrontal narrative control, the ancestor, strengthens. The memory doesn't disappear, but it changes form. From a haunting to a story, from a flinch to a knowing, from a ghost to an ancestor. Every culture named in this episode understood, through millennia of communal practice, what Kandel proved at the molecular level, that the act of narration in the presence of witnesses physically restructures the brain's memory architecture. The Irish Wake understood that stories told in community about the deceased transform raw grief into integrated memory, that the accumulated testimonies of friends and neighbors weave a narrative fabric strong enough to hold the loss. Aboriginal Sari business understood that grief belongs to the community, not to the individual, that the nervous systems of the bereaved require the co-regulation of others to process what cannot be processed alone. Jewish Shiva understood that 7 days of structured, witnessed, communal presence provides a temporal container within which the conversion from acute loss to integrated memory begins. Kandel's fifth principle provides the cellular mechanism, psychotherapy, and by extension, any structured narrative processing experience produces changes in gene expression that alters synaptic connections and creates structural changes in neural architecture. The community storytelling circle synthesizes these insights into a monthly practice available to anyone, a structured gathering where difficult experiences are narrated, witnessed, and held, converting ghosts into ancestors through the oldest human technology there is. Here's your complete community storytelling circle protocol. Monthly gathering, 6 to 10 people, 90 minutes to 2 hours, including a shared meal. What you need: a consistent group of 6 to 10 people willing to commit to monthly gatherings, a comfortable private space. Someone's home is ideal. A talking object, like a stone, a candle, a shell, a timer. A meal prepared collectively or contributed to potluck style. No phones. Phase 1. Gathering and meal preparation, 20 to 30 minutes. The circle begins with a shared activity, preparing or setting out the meal together. This isn't small talk time, it's co-regulation time. The simple act of moving through a kitchen together, setting plates, pouring drinks, arranging food, creates autonomic synchronization before any difficult material is introduced. Bodies settle, breathing patterns entrain. The nervous systems in the room begin talking to one another. The meal is not consumed yet. It's prepared as the ritual's closing act. Phase 2, opening and container setting, about 5 to 10 minutes. The facilitator gathers everyone in a circle. Candle is lit. The talking object is placed in the center. Here's a suggested opening. We gather tonight to do what human beings have done in every culture and every era, to tell the stories that need telling, and to hear them. What is shared here stays here. When someone speaks, the rest of us listen. We don't advise, fix, compare, or respond. We witness. The talking object carries the authority and the responsibility. Whoever holds the object speaks the truth, and the rest of us hold space for that truth. Tonight's question: What story are you carrying that needs to be told? One collective breath, slow inhale, slow exhale. Phase 3, storytelling round, 45 to 60 minutes. The facilitator picks up the talking object and shares first, modeling vulnerability, depth, and the willingness to tell a story that has emotional weight. This is not a superficial check-in. This is the space for the material that lives in the body, the losses, the wounds, the ruptures, the unsaid things, the unprocessed experiences that exist as ghosts. The facilitator's share sets the depth. If it's surface level, the circle will stay surface level. If it's honest and vulnerable, the group will follow. After sharing, the facilitator places the talking object in the center. The next person picks it up when ready. No fixed order. Whoever feels moved reaches for the object. Time guideline, 5 to 8 minutes per person. A gentle timer, phone on silent with a vibration alert, can help maintain pacing without interrupting. The facilitator can gently indicate when time is approaching if needed. The witnessing protocol. While someone speaks, the rest of the circle witnesses. This means full eye contact, not required. The speaker may look at the floor, the candle, or their hands, and that's fine. No facial reactions that evaluate. No nodding vigorously, no grimacing, no gasping. Simply presence. The body language of witnessing is soft gaze, open posture, steady breathing. The message communicated without words. I am here. Your story is being received. You are not alone with this. After each person speaks, a pause. 10 to 15 seconds of silence. This is the integration space, the moment where the narrative settles into the room and the speaker's nervous system registers that the story has been received. Don't fill it. What if someone becomes very emotional? Let them. Tears are not emergencies. Silence is not failure. If someone sobs, the circle holds. No one reaches over to fix, comfort, or rescue. The emotional release is the processing. The witnessing is the support. After the emotion passes, and it will, the speaker can continue or place the talking object down. Both are honored. What if someone shares something that requires professional support? The community storytelling circle is not therapy. If someone discloses active suicidal ideation, ongoing abuse, or imminent danger, the facilitator should privately approach them after the circle to offer support in accessing appropriate professional resources. During the circle itself, the protocol remains witness and hold. Phase 4, closing and shared meal, about 30 to 45 minutes. After the storytelling round, the facilitator offers a brief closing. Thank you for what you brought here tonight, for the courage to speak and the generosity to listen. What was shared belongs to this circle. What you carry out is the knowledge that your story has been heard. Now we eat together, because every culture that processes grief and difficulty together also feeds each other afterward. The meal is the seal. The nourishment follows the narrative. Blow out the candle, rise from the circle, share the meal. The post-circle meal is not optional. It's structurally essential. Breaking bread together after emotional processing activates the tend and befriend response, the oxytocin-mediated social bonding system that completes the co-regulation cycle. You've been vulnerable. Now you're nourished. The nervous system registers. I shared something painful, and I was fed. That's the deepest corrective emotional experience available to a mammalian brain. The meal conversation should be unstructured, natural, warm, whatever arises. People may reference what was shared, or they may not. Both are fine. The transition from structured vulnerability to unstructured warmth mirrors the transition from grief to continuation that every morning tradition embodies. Frequency, monthly. This cadence allows sufficient emotional material to accumulate between gatherings while maintaining the trust and continuity of the group. More frequent than monthly risks emotional fatigue. Less frequent than monthly risks the group losing its depth. Group composition. The group should be consistent. The same core members meeting monthly. Trust builds through repetition. New members can be added by consensus, introduced gradually, such as attending as silent witnesses for the first gathering before sharing. Facilitation rotation. After the group is established, facilitation can rotate monthly. This distributes the responsibility and prevents the dynamic of a single leader emerging. Everyone facilitates. Everyone follows. Mistake 1. Turning it into group therapy. The community storytelling circle is ritual, not clinical treatment. There is no diagnosis, no treatment plan, no therapist-client dynamic. The facilitator is not a clinician. They're a fellow participant who holds the structure. If anyone in the group has acute mental health needs, they should be supported in accessing professional care in addition to the circle, not instead of it. Second mistake, cross-talking, advising, or me-tooing. The single most destructive behavior in a storytelling circle is responding to someone else's experience with, "I had a similar experience," or "Have you tried?" or "That reminds me of." This pulls the focus from the speaker to the responder and collapses the witnessing space. The protocol is absolute. No responses during the storytelling round. The facilitator must hold this boundary warmly but firmly. The third mistake is skipping the meal. The shared meal isn't a social nicety appended to the real practice. It's the integration phase, the moment where the nervous system completes the cycle from vulnerability to nourishment, from grief to continuation. Without the meal, the circle ends in a raw emotional space with no landing pad. Always eat together. Mistake 4. Making it a one-time event. The ghost to ancestor conversion doesn't happen in a single session. It happens through repeated witness narration over time. The story shifts across tellings, deepening, gaining perspective, finding new meaning. Monthly consistency is what produces the synaptic remodeling Candle described. A single gathering is powerful. A year of monthly gatherings is transformative. Mistake 5. Pressuring silence into speech. Not everyone will share every month. Some people may sit through multiple gatherings holding the talking object in silence. This is not failure, it's presence. And presence in a witnessing circle, even without speaking, still provides co-regulation and the experience of communal safety. The invitation is always open. The requirements is never imposed. Mistake 6. Hosting it in a public or semi-public space. Privacy is sacred. The stories shared in this circle are often the most vulnerable material a person carries. A coffee shop, a co-working space, or any environment where the group can be overheard destroys the safety container. Someone's living room, a private backyard, a quiet rented space. Walls and doors matter. Here's your challenge, and it's a 2-part challenge. Part 1. This weekend, reach out to 3 to 5 people you trust and propose a monthly community storytelling circle. Send a message. Make a call. Say, "I'm starting a monthly gathering where we sit in a circle, take turns speaking honestly about what we're carrying, and listening without responding. Then we eat together. Would you be interested?" You'll be surprised by how many people say yes. The hunger for this kind of connection is enormous. People are waiting for someone to create the container. Part 2 is schedule the first gathering within 30 days. Put it on the calendar. The date makes it real. Share your progress. How many people you invited, how many said yes, when the first gathering is scheduled, in the watering hole on Telegram. Let's build a network of storytelling circles. The community storytelling circle is the capstone practice of the Wired Ape ritual toolkit. Every other practice feeds into it. Breathwork, cyclical sighing, box breathing, provides the individual nervous system regulation needed to approach difficult material. Expressive writing provides the individual narrative construction skill needed to give language to what was previously formless. The fire circle provides the witnessing structure. The synchrony circle provides the body-level bonding. Cold exposure provides the relationship with discomfort. The Renaissance practice provides the cognitive flexibility. The technology sabbatical provides the discernment to protect the conditions under which genuine connection is possible. The community storytelling circle brings all of these together in their highest expression. A group of human beings, regulated in their body, skilled in narrative, practiced in witnessing, bonded through shared rhythm, resilient through discomfort tolerance, sitting together monthly to do the most important thing a wired ape can do. Tell the truth about their lives and be heard. Candle proved that this changes the brain at the level of gene expression and synaptic architecture. Every tradition in this episode demonstrates that cultures have known this for millennia. The community storytelling circle is the modern form of the oldest human technology. The story told around the fire, witnessed by the tribe, converting the unbearable into the bearable, the ghost into the ancestor, the wound into the wisdom. When Ritual OS launches in August 2026, The Community Storytelling Circle will be the flagship communal practice, with facilitation guides, group formation tools, scheduling integration, and a practitioner directory connecting users to trained circle facilitators in their area. 3 points. 1. Eric Handel proved that learning, including the learning that happens in the psychotherapy and narrative processing, physically changes the brain structure through altered gene expression and synaptic remodeling. When you tell your story in the presence of witnesses, you are not just talking about it. You are rebuilding the architecture of your memory. 2. Implicit, body-stored trauma, ghosts, is converted into explicit, narrative-structured memory, ancestors, through hippocampal engagement that narration requires. Community witnessing adds co-regulation, social validation, and external confirmation that complete the conversion individual processing cannot. 3. Every culture in human history has practiced some form of witness communal storytelling for processed grief and difficulty. The Irish wake, Aboriginal sari business, Jewish Shiva. Your ancestors knew. Now you know. Now you have the neuroscience. And now you have the practice. Gather your people. Light the candle. Pick up the stone. And turn your ghosts into ancestors. Follow the Wired Ape on Instagram and X. Come back Monday for the next Mismatch Monday. Be kind to your Wired Ape brain, and when the ghosts visit, give them a name, a story, and a room full of people willing to listen.